Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of these very interesting, slightly memey Ktactical upper receivers. Now, if you're not familiar with Ktactical, they're probably most well known for their aesthetics, but they do make and design some fairly interesting products. This is going to be on one of their upper receivers, though they also carry a lot of accessories and accoutrements with the Kawaii anime aesthetic. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that, if you're into that sort of thing, that is. This video is sponsored by Noise Fighters. So if you're in the market for night vision accessories, whether that be their Pano Bridge, J-Arm, or even their new Cliffhang IR riser that's designed for your red dot magnifier and even your laser aiming module, then go ahead and check them out. Once again, that is Noise Fighters. Now, if you need actual night vision devices or other optics, you can also check out Optics Force. They sent out this AGM Gen 2 Plus unit that I've been playing around with. Review coming on that shortly, but you can go ahead and check out both of them at the links in the description or pinned comment. Now, full disclosure on this upper is that they did send it out to me for free, so I did not pay for it whatsoever. I have also done a review on their 5-inch 5.56 upper. Yes, I said that right. On top of that, we have talked about doing some work together on another project in the future, so just keep that in mind that there is a relationship there. Now, to get this out of the way at the beginning, these are not value uppers or products. The uppers themselves start at around 1,500 bucks and go up from there. So if value is your thing, like myself and a lot of my viewers, well, this is more of a, look at that kind of novelty, or as the Allfather Nut and Fancy would say, a second kind of cool. Now, just because some of the parts are memey and the build isn't the most serious, doesn't mean it's not very high quality. As we will get into outside of two parts, all of them are very nice and perform very well. The assembly is also done to a very high standard. He basically assembles all of his uppers like I do. Uppers are lapped, bedded, and on top of Loctite 620 as the retaining compound, he also uses a .001-inch metal shim, which essentially fits in between the barrel extension and the upper receiver, which further solidifies them together. Everything is torqued properly, Loctite on the handguard screws, and rock set on the gas block. At the end of testing, I did a reverse torque test on the handguard screws and the gas block screws to see if anything had come loose in my time with the upper, and fortunately everything was still rock solid. Now, the upper starts at 1,500 bucks with no muzzle device, and I believe 1,650 with a Surefire SOCOM brake. I have been using mine with the Griffin gate lock system and also the Reardon Plan B, so throughout the footage you should see it in a couple of different configurations, though again, usually these will ship with a Surefire SOCOM brake, and the SOCOM brake does work better with one of its more likely use cases, which is going to be as a sort of competition rifle, if the aesthetics are your thing. Each upper ships with a assembly and testing checklist in this cool little folder going over all of your relevant information. Just a nice touch, which again, when you're paying out large chunks of change, it's nice to see. Getting into my specific upper, I have had this one since January and have been using it fairly consistently for the last 6 months. At this point, we are at or around 2,000 rounds, but we'll talk about reliability towards the end. Starting out with the barrel, this is a 16-inch mid-length system chambered in 223 Wild. Now, the barrel itself is made out of 416R stainless steel, which is a great steel in terms of accuracy potential. On top of that, it also utilizes 5R rifling on the bore, which in theory will allow a better seal between the barrel and the bullet, which can lead to higher velocities, and again, if it's machined properly, can also be very accurate as well. The profile of the barrel is more of a heavy profile, but with the spiral fluting, you end up somewhere around a middleweight in terms of the overall weight. Now, when it comes to spiral fluting, I have heard some people theorize that it can reduce accuracy, as it can cause the barrel to twist in the direction of the flutes versus straight fluting, which of course has a more neutral effect on barrel harmonics. Although I'm not really sure how much weight to put on that, as the LWRC barrels have insanely aggressive spiral fluting with very deep cuts, and they also happen to be some of the most accurate barrels that I've tested, so take that for what it's worth. The one downside of 416R stainless steel for a barrel is, in general, you will see a reduced barrel life versus, say, 4150. However, with coatings, you can close that gap somewhat. Speaking of coatings, as I am sure you have noticed, The entire barrel is coated in this titanium nitride, which serves the dual role of one, giving the ostentatious gold coloring that matches the aesthetics of the build, and it's also extremely hard, corrosion resistant, and lubricious. Titanium nitride is one of the top tier coatings, provided like most things, it's applied properly, and of course you can live with the color. Moving on to the rail, this is a 15-inch SLR wedge rail with the top pick section removed in the middle. While this might complicate some setups in terms of light, lasers, irons, etc., for this specific application, I think it's preferable as it allows the user to get a complete wrap around the handguard. And again, this isn't the most serious application, so cutting a little bit of the weight, getting a little bit better grip, for some people might be worth it. Now, SLR makes some of the nicest, most expensive handguards out there. Again, you may not like the specific part selection, but they are high quality components. Now on the Ktactical upper, the anti-rotation tab that fits over the black nitride gas tube is of course anodized red, as it should be. Moving on to the gas block, this is the first part that I don't like, and I don't think it belongs on this build. It's a Kawaii precision adjustable gas block. Now, one thing nice about it is there is no roll pin for the gas tube. Instead, you have a very diminutive screw that threads through the gas tube to hold it in place. This isn't a game changer, but it is quite nice in terms of installation. The problem that I have with the gas block is that the adjustment methodology is just a set screw. And that's it. No detent, no retention method. It just sits there and you hope it doesn't move on its own. Now, through the 2,000 rounds that I've used this upper, I set it during my initial range session and I never touched it again, and it didn't move during the rest of my testing. Now, while mine worked just fine, I just don't like how cheap and non-confidence inspiring it is. I believe the reason that Andrew uses these gas blocks is that they are easily accessible from the side of the handguard with a 3/32 Allen key, and you don't need to remove the handguard to access it quickly. My experience with adjustable gas blocks is that I'm not really adjusting them very often, so I would personally rather deal with a longer Allen key and a minorly annoying adjustment, but end up with a more robust detent system rather than just hoping that set screw doesn't slowly walk out over a longer period of time. There are of course much more expensive on the markets as well, like the rifle speed system, but that would add about $200 to a already expensive upper. Moving back to the upper, this is the other part that I don't particularly like. These are oversized and angular billet upper receivers that Mega used to make, and I want to say now a couple other companies are making them as well. I don't have any functional issues with the upper, other than they interfere with most ambi lowers. On my PDQ equipped lowers, they make getting to the lever nearly impossible, and on my next level arms, ambi lower, they actually just don't fit together because of how oversized the forward assist is on these billet uppers. I think that if you want an aesthetic billet upper, there are other options on the market for roughly the same cost that are smaller and lighter and won't cause those compatibility issues with some ambi lowers. The Aero M4 E1 uppers would do the same thing with, of course, less size, weight, and cost. Now moving on to the BCG, these are from Cryptic Coatings, which are known for their, you guessed it, their coatings. They offer some really wacky color schemes, but what we are dealing with here is again titanium nitride. Now, the only thing that isn't titanium nitride is the interior of the carrier and the key, which is actually chrome lined, which I personally like. Now, of course, the bolt itself is Carpenter 158, which is the mil-spec material. On top of that, they are individually high pressure tested, which is basically just a high pressure round, then they magnetically particle inspect to see if there are any cracks or issues with the material itself. So again, it's just a high quality mil-spec style carrier with a very nice coating on the outside. Oddly enough, I have dealt with another titanium nitride chrome BCG from E2 Armory, and it ended up having the exact same issue at nearly the exact same round count. And that is that the gas rings are no longer providing a good seal on the inside of the carrier. Now, gas rings should be replaced at regular intervals anyways, so the fact that they went out maybe 1,000 rounds earlier than expected isn't the worst thing in the world, and it is pretty easy to test them. Again, gas rings should last anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 rounds, and if you're using an overgassed upper, you might be fine for 10,000 rounds, but again, it is just something you want to notice. Last part on the upper is their BAT charging handle, which is a very oversized ambi charging handle that gives the user a ton of real estate and also matches the angular upper. When I reviewed their 5-inch upper some time ago, I actually had that charging handle fail on me. The internal springs weren't strong enough and the roll pins weren't tight enough, but since then they have upgraded the springs and swapped to solid pins, It's a solid charging handle, it does work perfectly fine, I don't have an issue with that. Doesn't really do much for gas deflection, though no charging handle really does, but that's a separate video. Honestly, these charging handles might be a little bit too big for me for serious applications, but again, for trying to run them fast when you want to, it's nice to have that extra real estate, and again, maybe a comp shooter would think it's fine. Now, getting to reliability over the last 6 months and 2,000 rounds, I purposely did not clean or lubricate the upper whatsoever. Most of the time, I was running it with either a resonator K or a turbo K as a suppressor. I only put a few rounds through it unsuppressed at the end to make sure that it was still running, and as you can tell, it was getting very sluggish with those gas rings no longer holding the way they should. But I am happy to report that after I finished my testing, other than it not locking back on some mags, which is probably a PDQ issue, I had no issues with reliability whatsoever. There were a few occasions where I purposefully made it fail, like running a 7-ounce buffer unsuppressed, or using it with bad Desert Tech Q mags. Other than that, flawless function. Now to be clear, I would never recommend not cleaning or lubricating a firearm, that's stupid. I just wanted to see if these coatings are actually doing what they claim to, and well, yeah, at least in this sample size, they are working as intended to keep the upper running even when they get extremely dirty. Also, as you can probably tell from some of the B-roll, the finish has also held up extremely well. Moving on to accuracy, well, let's just cut to the chase. I was hoping for better. The upper has a lot of things on paper that should make it more accurate. Lapped, bedded, shimmed, 416 stainless steel, 5R rifling, heavy-ish profile. But at least with the ammo that I tested, I never got great results. Starting out with Callaway 55 grain remanufactured ammo, big sponsor by the way, big thanks to those guys, use code FOCUS to save yourself some money. That came in at around 5 MOA, which is more than what I get from most guns. I would say in general that ammo shoots 2 to 3 MOA most of the time, however with this specific barrel, it just doesn't quite like it. Moving on to 77 grain Federal Premium, that shot much better at around 2 MOA, but not particularly exciting. The 73 grain Hornady ELD-M almost shot a 1 MOA group with one little flyer in there opening it up. Back to Callaway, this time with their 77 grain Mark 262 clone, that had a horrible flyer and honestly came in near the 55 grain Reman ammo. Now keep in mind that this accuracy testing was done about halfway through the process at around the 1,000 round mark. But on the very last day of testing, just before I wrapped up filming, I shot a couple more groups just to see if anything had changed. The Callaway 55 grain Reman was still shooting very poorly, probably the worst I've seen it, and the 77 grain Mark 262 put up a much more respectable 2-ish MOA group. And those were the last 10 rounds through the upper. Now I'm sure with the right load, better shooter, etc., you could get those groups a little smaller, but that was the results that I got with those loads on those days. I have seen worse, but I've also seen a lot better, keep in mind the cost and weight of the system. So just who is this thing for? Well, I think we already ruled out serious applications and value-minded shooters, which just saw about 99% of my audience walk out the proverbial door. But I think an application where you can make it work is for a comp shooter or an anime-loving memer with a lot of cash burning a hole in your fedora. For the comp shooter, the weight and reliability is very good. It shoots about as nice as any 16-inch gun with an adjustable gas block can. The rail is also very nice to get a complete grip around it since they aren't mounting any accessories to the front anyways. And if the anime vibes are your thing, maybe that puts you over the edge, if I don't first.
Not the answer I was looking for.
But for me, and probably most of my viewers, it's a novelty. A well-running novelty, but a novelty nonetheless. But with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think of this upper receiver and Ktactical in the comments down below. And with all of that out of the way, thank you once again for watching. I will see you in the next one. God bless.